Hi, I'm T1J. Follow me on Twitter.
No.
So on this channel, I've made a couple videos that were critical of feminism. And my ideas about feminism have evolved over time, so if I sound more nuanced than I did before, that's why.
Just to let you know, I skipped 2 minutes of irrelevant shit in this video, and then there's another 2 minutes at the end of irrelevant shit, so I'm just letting you know that there are big chunks missing if you go and watch the original yourself.
I think and have always thought that feminism is useful and necessary because gender inequality is a real thing. Women are disadvantaged in various ways, but attitudes about gender and expectations of gender roles cause problems for both men and women.
Look, I agree that we shouldn't make a big blanket statement that all feminism is bad, but this is the problem that I have with your thinking that you just expressed. It's always women first. There's always women are this, and then men as an afterthought, if men are included at all. And there are things like men have the majority of problems with homelessness, men have the majority of problems with suicide, and yet we always just hear about women. Like, did you know that 25% of women are homeless? Oh, really? Well, 75 of men are, but that doesn't matter, does it? That's the problem that I have. That's why I don't like feminism. That's why I never really liked feminism if we're talking about the history of it. Yes, if I were to say that feminism has done nothing, I would be in the wrong, but I just don't think that they approach the issue well at all. That's why we're in the area that we are today. Because men have issues too, but we keep pushing those aside. We keep pushing aside things for men. Like, I think today is International Women's Day. We're all hearing about women, and I was watching the news, ABC News today, and this guy wrote in and he said, well, it's hypocritical. We never get International Men's Day, but we always get International Women's Day. And then the presenters just went completely cold and went, what? What's happening? Oh, yeah, it's a debate that's happening. That's a thing. And then they just stuttered and then they kept going. And they kept making jokes about it, and then they kept going, women, 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 and then completely forgetting about the debate that was apparently so important. That's what people are sick of. It's always women first, and that shouldn't be the case because that is not gender equality.
However, lots of people are bad at feminism. You often see complicated ideas reduced to buzzwords and platitudes. You see misrepresentations of data. You see animosity and exclusion rather than cooperation and patience. That kind of feminism exists. I don't think anyone denies that.
But
However, the existence of bad feminism implies that good feminism is also possible. And I'd argue that good feminism exists. It's usually more intellectual and nuanced or academic. And failing that, just less obnoxious.
So you're basically saying that people go after low-hanging fruit. I do agree that there are things like just compilations of things where people just make these videos about the really crazy ones. I get it. I get what you're trying to say. But the way that you're going about it is wrong. You're saying that academic feminism is somehow inherently just so much better and so much smarter. And the thing is, so let's say there are different types of feminism. There's activism feminism and there's academic feminism. Just because academia is associated with being smart does not mean that all these feminist arguments are inherently the smarter, higher hanging fruit. There are some crazy fuckers in university that you could just do away with, just debunk in like one sentence. Their entire premise is wrong, and once you just prove that where they're coming from is wrong, everything else just turns to dust as well. They're the crazy fuckers who teach about whiteness in university, and they have absolutely no standing, no leg to stand on at all. Just because it's fancy words does not mean that it's inherently smarter. Sometimes the activist feminist may have a better argument than the academic one. It's not just these two groups that can be pushed in either direction, and one of them is on a pedestal and one isn't. You yourself seem to contradict yourself between feminism is a good thing and some feminism is not a good thing, and feminism that's bad isn't feminism, and feminism can't be defined by anybody, so all of it's feminism. Which one is it?
Some people deny the existence of good feminism. Some outright reject the idea that feminism is at all useful in any way.
Sure, but who? Like, is there a problem, or are these people just attacking you? Who is making the argument?
I think most fair individuals agree that feminism can be done in a constructive way. Like, I think most people acknowledge that society isn't perfect the way it is and are okay with the general idea of specific groups trying to fix problems, whether those are gender related or whatever.
So we're just gonna move on from that other point then? Okay, so what I'm getting so far is that some people think different things about feminism, some that you don't agree with and some that you do, but there's no specific significance on why or who is doing that. And yeah, if there's a group fixing a problem, then most people are happy with it and they'll acknowledge that there is a kind of limit for the amount of sanity in a particular group as it grows, and then as it grows, there are going to be more and more crazy people in it, but those crazy people are usually the vocal minority. But if there is a legitimate problem and that group is not doing anything to fix it, and they're making other problems instead, and all of that's just making the original problem worse, then people are going to start speaking out about it. Feminism is really making it worse. I mean, domestic abuse, all of the support is directed at women. So there's a whole bunch of people who are not getting any support. And the definition of abuse, the definition of rape is getting so stretched that women who actually have these things happen to them, everybody's putting way much more scrutiny on them than was originally logically supposed to happen. People are checking if they're doing it for attention and stuff, and that's kind of a necessary thing that happens if the definition of rape is you looked at me funny. There are problems with feminism, and you can't just brand those people as bad feminists, because what if there is a core problem in feminism, at the center of feminism? You can't just throw that away.
Quote unquote bad feminism is usually manifested as what a lot of people like to call pop feminism, which refers to the fact that when these ideas reach a mainstream audience, they lose all of their context and become dumbed down. And then a bunch of people jump on the bandwagon without having done much research themselves, and in spite of that, still are vehemently opposed to any kind of disagreement. And this isn't unique to feminism. This happens to basically anything that becomes mainstream. A common criticism of anti-feminists is that they mischaracterize real feminism by using examples from pop feminism.
Well, tons of people do go into academic papers, they do get to the core of these issues. There are tons of popular channels who do this, and a lot of people admire them and then go on and do that as well. And I get that there are people who go after low-hanging fruit, but yeah, they are for entertainment. Those other people are more delving into those arguments and it's more out of interest. There is some entertainment there, but that's not like the core focus of it. Those people who are going after low-hanging fruit, they just want to entertain people. They just want people to laugh. They're not trying to be a Christopher Hitchens. They just want people to laugh at the crazies. And it's not just that these ideas are being dumbed down, though that can be the case, I agree. There's this assumption again that the only reason that these ideas are wrong is because they've been dumbed down. That if you go back into academia, that they're completely right. But sometimes ideas come from academia and those ideas in academia are shit, and then they get watered down to more shit. That's it. I mean, how did the wage gap argument get so popular?
Now, the term real feminism is kind of glib because I'm sure a lot of the people being referred to would resent being called fake feminists or lesser feminists or unreal feminists or whatever. But for the purpose of this video, real feminism is feminism that is nuanced and compassionate and factually sound.
Haven't you already labeled pop feminists as lesser feminists by saying that they're bad? You just spent a whole while labeling one type of feminism as the bad type of feminism, and then you're putting emphasis on academia as good type of feminism, and you just did that on how they present their arguments. Aren't you doing the same thing?
I want to say I'm not trying to invoke no true Scotsman. I'm not saying that things I don't agree with aren't real feminism.
It's just weird how you spent the first part of the video completely brushing aside a particular type of feminism and saying that their arguments are done in a bad way or that they're not smart, depending on the type of feminism they are, and then you're saying that they're low-hanging fruit, and people keep going after them, and then you're saying the bad feminism exists, but like, I know you're saying that they aren't real feminists, but you're still going to just ignore them and pretend they're not there, and that's kind of doing the same thing.
Because feminists and feminist allies have a lot of disagreements with each other about the best way to solve these problems. It's not a hive mind. There's always an ongoing conversation, which is what you'd expect by anything that involves more than one human being. I also don't mean to imply that I am the authority on what a real feminist is. I have my own ideas about that with which you may disagree. But what
I don't really understand the difference between feminists and feminist allies. Can someone kind of point this out if there's a legitimate thing? Because from what I understand, there are proper feminists, and then there are allies who aren't feminists but are encouraged to accept feminist values. I don't really understand. Wouldn't that just make you a feminist then? Because you're accepting the values and you want to fight for the cause? Feminist, right? I don't really understand why there's a difference there. Are you just not as much of a feminist? Who's the arbiter of how much of a feminist you are? It doesn't seem like there is one for there to be an open group like this. I just don't really understand why there would have to be that distinction. You get these YouTubers like Claudia Bolin, I think, and she did a video saying that males can't be feminists because they're men and they should be allies. but they're still doing like a feminist thing by embracing feminist ideals and fighting for it. I just don't understand why there's the distinction. And I don't really understand why there's the jumps in different points. Like, where are you going with this? You mentioned before that there's shit feminism, there's good feminism, and then you said that you're on an arbiter of that, and then said that people disagree on things.
What I'm talking about is when these ideas become so oversimplified and decontextualized that they're just silly or incoherent. Like ban bossy. That's fucking silly, dude. Basically what I'm saying is if you're getting your feminism from sources like teenagers on Tumblr or like Beyonce, then it's probably pop feminism. So the response that I've been seeing a lot lately is that since pop feminism is more mainstream and more popular and arguably more influential, then that indicates that pop feminism is the real feminism.
So far, the only people that I've seen making a really big deal about distinctions in real feminism and not real feminism are feminists. People who say that there's like a bad thing and it's like, those aren't real feminists. They don't act like me. Other feminists accuse people of going after bad feminism or going after low-hanging fruit feminism or not real feminism. And that's why you get that it's popular feminism argument. Because isn't feminism as a movement supposed to be about getting people involved with this popular idea of changing things? So if it's not the popular idea, then what idea is there? What are people supposed to be following if it's not a bunch of ideals? Because if it's a big group of people with an idea, then it's a popular idea because a lot of people are into that idea. I don't really understand what argument I'm supposed to be going after. If the popular idea is suddenly that women are better than men, do you expect me to go after the really unpopular idea that pencils are sexist or something just because I'm not going after the right type of feminism? I don't really understand what point you're trying to make here. You just spent the beginning saying that we shouldn't take ideas seriously because they come from people like Beyonce or Tumblr. This sounds like you're making the distinctions on real feminism, even though you're saying that other people are doing that.
I can kind of see that a little bit. I've made a similar argument myself. Basically, the idea that you can't help but respond to what you see, like what is all over the place, what's in your face. That's what you're going to naturally respond to. And
well, yeah, because that's what's happening. All you see is people who are doing crazy shit. And then you look into it and you see that they're calling themselves feminists, and there's a whole lot of them. And then they tell you that you can't define what feminism is, and that no one can define what feminism is, so they're feminists because they're allowed to call themselves what they want to call themselves. As far as I'm concerned, if you call yourself a feminist, then I'll treat you as a feminist. Because I guess the label isn't really what's important. I'll still argue with what you have to say if I disagree, but if you call yourself a feminist, then whatever, good for you. I'm not arguing that people shouldn't call themselves feminists if they want to. I'm just arguing with the kind of main idea that seems to come out from people who are calling themselves feminists. At the end of the day, that's what a lot of people are doing. And what else I see are people who don't like those arguments but like the movement for whatever reason, so they're trying to know true Scotsman their way out of it, and then you come along and just contradict yourself like this, and what is happening now?
when I look at it that way, I see a lot of problems with mainstream feminism, things that I could criticize. But personally, what I see is not nearly as bad as what this new anti-feminism movement makes it out to be.
Maybe it's because you need to do this. You need to open the lids a bit.
This idea that feminism is ruining everything is just completely overblown. I mean, sometimes they're obnoxious and sometimes they're mean and sometimes they exaggerate stuff. And this is annoying to people who are trying to do intellectual feminism, but they're not actually ruining your life. It doesn't warrant a reactionary movement. I mean,
They stop MRAs from meeting and claim that it's hate speech that they're meeting. They throw things at Lauren Southern. They stop Christina Hoff Sommers from talking at places. They stop Milo Yiannopoulos from talking at places. I think they even tried to stop Dave Rubin from talking at some place. They try to censor things that are happening in public places, like people talking at places that they don't agree with those people. What about the trust and safety councils on the internet? What about the constant censorship? If you don't see how that's bad, maybe you should stick to being a janitor. Or maybe you should, what did you say in that Questions for Anti-SJWs video? Just cover your ears and let the smart people talk?
I'm interested in hearing what ways people think feminism has negatively impacted the world, like in a significant, real way. And that's an honest question because I don't see it myself.
It's really weird that you haven't seen that because that is all over the place. The minute that you look up feminism and the arguments against it, you start to see that stuff immediately. And I'll give you the benefit of a doubt, I guess, because You may not have seen the people that I have, maybe. Maybe you discovered this kind of argument in a different way that I have. But still, it's a really big thing. Like, Karen Strawn, she's really cool and she makes all of these arguments really well. And she has these really intellectual arguments. And all of that is just lists of things that are wrong with feminism. The honey badgers do it in a really good way. And they're MRAs. So, then again, there's another argument against the stereotype of MRAs. They are actually really cool people.
What I think actually happens is people go out of their way to find the worst examples of feminists.
Can you shut the fuck up for a second too?
Okay, I take it back. You're being just extremely dishonest with saying that you don't see this shit happening. That is Big Red, that is Shanty Binks. You are actively seeing her yell at people and shout in someone's face. You are seeing this happen, and yet you are claiming that it isn't a big deal, and that this is only just the worst kind of feminism. Well, what if the worst kind of feminism is the biggest kind of feminism? What if you can see this happening, and you can see how many people are with her and harassing people? You can actively see that in the footage, and yet you're claiming that there's just like one person or two people doing it. All you have to do is look up how much this happens, and then you will realize why it's a big deal. And to get this footage, you probably passed a bunch of recommendeds and a bunch of other videos that show the same things happening over and over again with a bunch of different people, with big groups of people. You've seen the college campus shit. You've probably seen that everywhere, and yet you don't want that to be included in this argument because you don't want to admit that there is a big portion of the worst kind of feminism. You know this. Why are you pretending that that doesn't exist?
Or they go out of their way to completely exaggerate how bad a particular feminist is. I've been guilty of that myself. But that, of course, is a fallacy of composition. I don't think we need to get into that.
So, saying that there's a part of a group that's like this, and then making the jump that the entire group is like that, why did you skip that point? Why didn't you explain that? You could have... Why... I mean, that sounds like a really interesting point. Even if it's been said over and over again, you could have at least explained it. Or at least had a link in the description to someone else explaining it. Because I don't really know where you're going with it exactly, and I don't know why you just skip over it like that.
So then the argument is that pop feminism includes people who have real influence, like celebrities and media outlets and even the president. And again, this is only a problem if you have this preconceived idea that feminism is dangerous and evil rather than sometimes silly and disappointing. I think what you have to understand is that politicians and celebrities and fucking BuzzFeed, these things exist to pander.
Pander to young people who are incredibly impressionable.
There's no feminist world domination strategy. These people say the things that they think will get them the most clicks. And that's probably never going to change. If all of a sudden it became like super mainstream and popular to like lick toes, I guarantee you the president of the United States would be talking about how he enjoys licking toes.
But when people parrot these feminist talking points, they imply that there is a problem there. There is a problem that you need to change. They ignore the fact that the Equal Pay Act is a thing, and they keep talking about how there's a wage gap. Feminism is the type of movement that tries to show problems in society, and then try to get people to talk about it and encourage activism, like any group that wants social change. That is the problem. Because if there is no problem there, or if there's a problem that's being interpreted in the wrong way, and people are acting in a different way, they're not acknowledging what's really going on, they're making that problem worse. They will damage everything. They will make new problems out of things that were okay before. So this licking toes argument only works if the president specifically says that licking toes should be acted upon and done to other people, sometimes against their will, for the greater good. He wouldn't just be saying that he likes licking toes. He would be trying to force other people to like it too, or condemning people who don't like it, and saying that they're lesser people and that they're bigoted somehow. Just because they don't like it or they don't identify with it, even if they're not interfering with it in any way, he would try to say that they are bigoted against him and oppressing him because he likes doing it. And why licking toes, exactly?
This is exactly the same argument as people who moan about how, like, Miley Cyrus is ruining music. Is Miley Cyrus even still a thing? Is that outdated? She's not ruining music, she's just making music that's not that interesting. It's popular, but you're still free to ignore it and pay attention to things with more depth.
That comparison would only work if Miley Cyrus came out with other music and tried to stop other people from coming out with music, and saying that if you listen to rock music instead of Miley Cyrus, that you're morally wrong, and that you have to listen to it. And there would be people campaigning to say that other music shouldn't exist and that we should censor people from listening or making that particular type of music. Feminism always wants people to change their stuff. They never want to make their own things, because they know that they'll make it a shit thing and other people won't want it, so they go after other people. They feel like you have to have their opinions exactly. They won't leave you alone. Miley Cyrus just making music is fine. It doesn't affect me from enjoying the Gorillaz or Seether or Nirvana or any other stuff like that. If she suddenly burst in the door, or her fans suddenly burst into the door and said that you can't listen to that music anymore, you have to listen to Miley Cyrus, then that would work. But it doesn't. And you know that.
I'm not saying that people like Miley Cyrus or pop feminists don't deserve criticism, but that criticism has to be made within the right context. And talking about pop feminism as if it's a good representation of feminism in general is like saying that the health section on Yahoo Answers is a good representation of medical advice. It's intellectually lazy.
It's not a representation of whole feminism. You said so yourself, feminism is not a monolith. People do not really criticize good feminism because there's nothing to criticize there. The arguments are good, the way that people are doing it is good, the way that people are having conversations is good, the way that they're fundraising for people in third world countries is good. It is not the argument, it's a type of feminism. And it's a type of feminism that is not good, and that's why people are targeting it. That's why people are targeting this pop feminism. Because all the other good feminists, why would we be arguing with them? Why would I pick out Christina Hoff Sommers and suddenly make this argument with her, even though I like what she has to say and I like what she's doing? Wouldn't I rather just let her do what she's doing and encourage her to do what she's doing, if I think it's a good thing? And what context is the right context? Are you talking about the argument the person should be making the argument when they're in the right context? Or should they be waiting for when the feminist is in the right context? What is the right context?
And this isn't hashtag not all feminists. This is an appeal to context.
Context, like you failed to recognize in the Shanty Binks clip?
If you're interested in academic feminist theory or want to engage serious feminists with intelligent and nuanced ideas about societal issues, you're just not gonna find that on Jezebel. If what you wanna do is just criticize or make fun of silly feminists, that's fine, I guess, as long as it's not literal harassment, which is distressingly common these days. But just don't disingenuously imply that that's what real feminism is.
Mean comments is not harassment. Not controlling your audience and their thoughts is not harassment. Specify examples of actual harassment occurring.
That's just me though.
Motherfucker.